G-Rock Bentley here with my weekly blog from grock.com. Check out the printed version there. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Everything is in the description. Connect with me. I appreciate it. I always knew that I wouldn't live to see 35. It wasn't a guess. It was a sure thing as far as I was concerned. I had heard enough about the Cold War and the impending threat of nuclear annihilation to know at least that much. All my life, I had been told about the imminent arrival of the great and terrible bomb that would destroy all that this 19-year-old kid had ever known. Would it be the Soviets, the Chinese? Would the muscle of America be its own downfall? On this point, I wasn't sure, but it didn't really matter, as there would most likely be no fingers to point anyway. My parental units have been so caught up in the idea of certain nuclear war that us three teenage boys were told that we would be smuggled into Canada should the country reinstitute the draft. There had been a lot of concern over the return of the Selective Service Act, which required so-called men who were 18 or older to register for a possible draft. Reagan had brought back the act in the face of the growing threat of engagement with the commies, and it downright sealed the deal when it came to making a young and impressionable kid believe that there was, as Johnny Rotten put it, no future. I solidly believed the future, Mr. Lydon's fatalistic view of my world, and it really became somewhat of a mantra, not just for me, but for an entire generation who were told that they had no identity or future, and so became known as Generation X. I blame Billy Idol for the unfortunate tag, but alas, that's another subject entirely. I viewed the world and my place in it through this kaleidoscope of fatalism. The idea of our own impending doom never left us Gen Xers. At school, we practiced duck and cover drills where we would hide under our desks and cover our heads with our hands, all the while knowing that this was a completely futile game of make-believe in the face of the force of a 50-megaton nuclear blast. We had also repeatedly been shown the mangled and twisted images of those who had been decimated in Nagasaki and Hiroshima like they were absolutely no big deal. Those pictures are still seared into my memory. And just like a lost photo of a dearly departed loved one, I wasn't scared. I wasn't worried. I was certain I would be dead long before I got old enough to care about anything substantive. I wasn't thinking about my future. I was literally living in the moment at all times. I, just like Prince, was going to party like it was 1999. So it was with this mindset that I opted to head west on Interstate 10 to California with only my guitar and the $400 that I had pocketed from trading down my sweet and sexy 280Z to a boxy four-door Mazda with a trunk big enough to hold just about everything that mattered to me. It was the summer of 1985, and all I cared about was me. I figured since I wasn't going to be around that long, I should do whatever the hell I wanted, and what I wanted to do at that moment was rock the F out. So, just like Jethro, I loaded up the truck, headed for the hills. The Hollywood Hills. My band had a little bit of momentum as a big fish in a very, very small pond, but we felt like it was enough to claim our stake as international superstars, of course. So like every other misguided soul who felt like the future was non-existent and nothing except pleasing yourself mattered, we went to Hollywood. I mean, where else would we go? Hollywood was filled with kids who felt the same sense of fatalism and wanted nothing more than to bash its freaking teeth in. There was a sense that we were fighting a battle against the forces of the status quo and that we might actually have the possibility of winning. Armed to the teeth with battle hymns like "We're Not Gonna Take It" and "Fight for Your Right to Party," we marched off to war against the forces of evil who would love nothing more than to see us cave into the notion that we were merely cogs in the machine. Now, to make matters worse, the enemy actually went after our words with the government passing laws that would allow the ban and removal of certain songs or artists if their lyrics were deemed offensive. Now, we actually had a tangible reason to fight other than being told we weren't allowed to do it. So Dee Snider and Frank Zappa went to bat for us, just like Kevin Bacon and Footloose. They saved the day, only this time without all the dancing. So we had won the war. Now what? Maybe there is a future. Oh, crap. If I had only known. So just like a wounded soldier returning from battle, I was scarred and scared of an uncertain future, and I had no intention of ever seeing it coming to fruition. But now it was coming at me like a southbound locomotive. And then the unthinkable happened. I didn't die. Yep, that's right. I turned 35 and miraculously I was still alive. I mean, I tried and I tried, but just like a Timex, I kept on ticking. Believe me, it was just as much of a surprise to me as anybody. If I had been a betting man, I would have lost my shirt. But as it was, I went ahead and cashed in my carefree attitude, my band, my hair, and of course my spandex for a middle-class jackpot, including the obligatory wife, child, dog, bills, mortgage, and a shit ton of other stuff that I was not prepared to deal with. Now, 20 years later, at 55, I'm starting to resign myself to the fact that I'll probably not go out in Bon Jovi's famed blaze of glory. And although I was wrong about the whole nuclear annihilation deal, most days I'm glad to be among the living. Most days. Now, even if I never do get to become an international superstar, I'm fortunate to have been where I've been and done what I've done in this lifetime, regardless of the motive. Hell, I'm even thankful for the fatalistic attitude that the Cold War and all associated with it brought about in not just me, but a whole generation of risk-taking, death-defying, life-loving, gusto-grabbing folks who do not seem to have one single solitary ounce of give-up between the entire lot of them. Now, maybe I'm alone. Maybe I'm the only one who felt this way growing up in a generation inundated with the idea of nuclear destruction and the potential of ending up fighting for survival in some kind of Mad Max-like post-apocalyptic world, but I seriously doubt it. As a matter of fact, I truly believe that the idea of having no future actually may have liberated us Gen Xers from the fear of the potential consequences of our actions, and thus spurred us to break through many of the rock-solid barriers that had seemed impenetrable to previous generations. So big ups to Johnny Rotten, Ronnie Reagan, Robbie Oppenheimer, and all the others who scared the living crap out of an entire generation of us labeled as Gen X. Without you, we would have been relegated to the humdrum safety and security of a life of acting responsibly, doing the right thing, building a legacy, and planning for our future. But thankfully, along with your influence, we were able to evade responsibility, elude the law, and ignore planning for any kind of decent future completely. Way to go, guys.